John Deere rakes in over $60 billion everywhere, but the company was actually started by an orphan who started working at a very young age. This is the legacy of John Deere, a man who understood the pain of farmers and revolutionized farming. Now imagine being a farmer in the early 19th century. Farmers were already struggling to make the ends meet after the Industrial Revolution. And then, the struggles of tilling soil and waiting to get the fruit of their labor was taking a toll on the farmers. But no one seemed to care about them because of the fancy steel mills and factories that were being established in the countryside. Farmers were being pushed to the wall, and it seemed like they won't even exist after 2 or 3 decades. But then came a man named John Deere. John was born in 1804 in Rutland, Vermont, a small town in New England. His town was surrounded by green mountains and farms, so he spent his early childhood being close to nature. The Deere family belonged to a close-knit farming community, and they were struggling, to say the least. John Deere's childhood seemed like a chapter out of a fairy tale. He was living on a farm with no worry in the world. However, in 1808, something tragic happened that changed his entire life. So Deere's family was struggling financially when his father found out that he has an inheritance in England. He set sail to reclaim his inheritance, but he never made it back. Now John's mother was responsible for the entire family. John grew up in poverty, and he helped his mother tending to their small farm. He also saw the difficult life of farmers in his town, and this experience gave him a deep understanding of the challenges farmers face on a daily basis. And when John got a little older and started tilling the soil, he realized something that later became the reason why he developed the most important farming equipment. So John Deere started doing like his family, but he had great difficulty with tilling the rocky New England soil. He soon realized that he wasn't alone and that all the other farmers had the same problem. But there was no equipment or machine in the market that made the tilling easier or less labor-intensive. Deere stopped thinking about it, and when he was 17, he decided to start making money and help his mother with the finances. So, he started hanging out with Benjamin Lawrence. Now, this was a prominent blacksmith of Middlebury, and Deere sure had some talent because Benjamin quickly took him under his wing. In the next few years, Benjamin taught him everything from shaping metal to precision and learning to forge. And then Deere thought that he should also learn how to repair his farm equipment, so he doesn't have to pay hefty money every time something breaks. So he learned how to do the minor repairs without having to call any help. This was the beginning of him taking farming seriously. However, in 1825, he left Benjamin and decided to travel around Vermont to see the outside world. He didn't want to be trapped in a small town all his life. So, he left his town, went to different places, and started advancing his skill. Within 2 years, he got married and settled in Leicester, where he also opened his own blacksmith shop. He thought he was going to be rich now that he was out in the world. However, he struggled to even make the ends meet. The man behind $1 million company was struggling with pennies at one point. He had 9 kids and no steady source of income. So after struggling for years, Deere made a bold decision to move to Illinois. He was lured in by the fertile land of the region and was hoping to build a happy little family there. This step was the defining step in Deere's life, otherwise, he would have died being a nameless blacksmith. Even in Illinois, Deere noticed that the farmers were having problems. They never really complained, but he understood the frustration and pain on their faces. But where most people saw suffering and hopelessness, Deere saw an opportunity. So at the time, farming was basically a back-breaking endeavor. In most parts of the United States, the soil was so heavy and thick with clay that conventional iron plows would just break. Farmers spent several hours and even days trying to clear just a few acres. The labor was exhausting and slow, but in return, the farmers often got little to no reward. And beyond the stubborn soil, farmers also had unreliable tools at their disposal that required constant maintenance. Even the iron plows were required to be sharpened and repaired frequently. and when they broke, the farmers had to buy them, which obviously cost an arm and a leg. Apart from the physical toll, farming also took a mental toll on families because they knew that one failed crop could destroy everything they've worked so hard for. Some families starved for days when the crop didn't turn out well, and top it all off, farmers also had to endure most of the expenses. For starters, they had to buy expensive seeds, tools, and livestock to keep the land fertile. This put them under huge debts even before they started farming. In this situation, it was nearly impossible for farming to flourish. It seemed like by the 20th century, farming would be eradicated and vegetables would grow in labs and factories. But then came the man of the hour, John Deere. Despite his own financial struggles, he started experimenting with different designs to make plows. He knew that if he solved this farming problem, all his problems would end. And he finally got his big break when he made a plow out of an old saw blade. It was nothing like the conventional iron plows that were used at the time. This one was made of steel, so it was sturdy, stronger, and way more resistant to getting clogged. It also cut through the rocky terrains easily, allowing farmers to work more efficiently. It was a very simple invention that later changed the entire landscape of the agriculture industry. John Deere took his invention to several farmers and they started using it. Initially, a lot of them were reluctant, thinking that it would spoil their soil. However, they soon realized that the new plow was saving them a lot of time and effort. It was also not breaking after a few uses, and everyone was very intrigued. The lands which were considered infertile because of the rocky soil suddenly started growing different plants, all thanks to Deere's new steel plow. It was as if farmers had suddenly gotten magic beans because their conditions were better than ever. Only in a few months, the people realized that their new crop is better than ever, and the word of this magical plow spread far and wide. But the only magic was in John Deere's mind, who managed to notice a problem and found a solution for it. When people from different regions started to know about this magical plow, something really unexpected happened. So John Deere started getting orders from all over the state. He became an overnight sensation because every farmer needed a plow that saves him time and energy. At one point, the demand got so high that John Deere couldn't manufacture the plow in his small blacksmith shop. So he had to expand his operations and move to a much larger facility. There, he started hiring people and produced plows on a much larger scale. Most of the profits he was getting from the sales, he was putting them back into his business. Deere wanted all farmers to have this plow because he knew how hard it was to till that rocky soil with a subpar plow. But Deere wasn't done yet. He had made the lives of farmers easier in his state, and the steel plow was a game changer. But he noticed that his plow still needed some improvements in certain soil types. The thing about Deere was that he didn't just make farming equipment, he lived with farmers. So he noticed how the farmers used his steel plow and if it was actually better than the plow they were using before. Now the steel plow was definitely better, but there was one little thing that John Deere noticed. He was walking in a farm one day, and he noticed that a farmer is constantly stopping to scrape off the mud from this steel plow. He noticed this several times and then realized that the mud sticks to the steel plow, which affects its efficiency. So, farmers have to stop from time to time and scrape off the mud. John Deere felt bad that he wanted to make something to save time, and instead, he has increased the headache of farmers. John decided to sit down again, rethink his design, and make something that solves this newfound mud problem. So he sat down at his drawing board and came up with the design of a self-scouring plow. He even doubted himself if making this plow was even possible. It was a very unique design, quite different from the ones available in the market. He fashioned this new plow, which was curved at just the right angle. So, the soil just slid off the plow without sticking to it, and the farmers didn't have to go an extra mile to clean it up. When he presented this design to the farmers, they agreed to use this plow because they knew by this point that John Deere was looking out for them. They started using this plow, and soon enough, it became a huge hit. This one was perfect and had little to no shortcomings, unlike Deere's initial steel plow. And this new self-scouring plow was also being sold out like hotcakes, because the farmers knew that they'd be left in the past if they don't advance their techniques with time. If John Deere would have been an ordinary businessman, he would have made this product his selling point and would have become a millionaire by expanding his business all over the US. However, John Deere came from a family of farmers, and he also thought like a farmer. He wanted to do business and make money, but he also wanted to solve the problems of farmers. Deere still remembered how hard it was for his mother to till the soil while they were little kids. He knew that every minute counted in a farmer's life, so didn't want to just bail on his fellow farmers. He reportedly started getting offers to expand his business and sell shares of his company, but John Deere decided to stick to innovations and keep his business low-key until he feels ready. So now that he solved the biggest soil tilling problem of the farmers, he decided to improve the efficiency in farming. He knew that farmers weren't just looking for tools, they wanted to save time and money. And that's exactly where the gang plow came to play. So he basically hitched together multiple plows, and instead of cutting just one row at a time, the farmers could cut several rows. It was shocking for Deere that no one thought about joining plows and just making it a gang plow before. It was a fairly simple design, but it worked so well. Deere tried it on his own farm for a few days before making his design public. He knew that if his mother had something like this, she wouldn't have been so tired all the time. And when he told his fellow farmers about his new invention, they were all shocked. No one could imagine something like this was even remotely possible, but John Deere had a knack of doing the most unimaginable things. And he was not even done yet. A few farmers initially started using the gang plow because Deere wanted to make sure that it worked well and did the tilling efficiently. It definitely surpassed all expectations and reduced the time by half. This was the new star product of John Deere. And from being a blacksmith, John was suddenly being seen as a businessman. People were buying his products, waiting in line, and even asking him when the new farming tool would come. It was a huge change in his life, and he never expected this response, but Deere was excited to say the least. He was earning a lot of money with the profits he was getting, and with that money, he was building a proper manufacturing unit and hiring more people to make sure they meet the needs of all farmers. But once his gang plow started getting insane sales, he also started getting a lot of requests. Some farmers who owned small farms weren't happy with the pricing of gang plow, and they wanted something that's not too big and slightly simpler so they can use it on their small farms. They also didn't want to keep buying plows because their profits were already so little. So they wanted Deere to come up with a plow that lasted them a really long time and did its job well. Deere also realized that not everyone needed a massive plow. Even some big farms wanted a plow that was simple because they liked tilling the soil in a good old-fashioned way. He went back to his drawing board and started designing something that suited the needs of small farmers. He also didn't want to make it super expensive, so he made sure that the manufacturing was also simple and cost-effective. So he basically made a walking plow, which was lightweight, so older farmers can also use it, and it was super simple too. At the time, farming wasn't just something men did. Everyone from women, kids, and elderly people participated in farming, and this walking plow was designed while keeping them in mind. It was so simple that even teenagers could use it to help their parents. Reports are that Deere didn't make huge profits from this plow because it was relatively smaller and cheaper. However, he still sold it because what really mattered to him was that farmers believed in him, and this walking plow made their lives easier. Now the farmers who couldn't afford his self-scouring or gang plow were able to buy this walking plow. This one was specifically aimed at very poor farmers who were struggling to even make the ends meet, so Deere kept his profit margin very low. He also started hiring more people, so the manufacturing process could be optimized. At this point, John Deere was actually an up-and-coming farming company that was a one-stop solution for farmers. But the upcoming innovations of Deere really put his business on the map. His next move was going to decide whether Deere was actually a talented blacksmith, or he was good at just making plows. Deere soon realized that tilling isn't the only problem that farmers faced. Farming was an incredibly labor-intensive job, so manually breaking to soil and removing weeds took hours, and at times, days. If a farmer was sick and couldn't go through this entire ordeal, he risked spoiling his entire crop. Deere also realized that soil cultivation often took a toll on people's health, and sometimes, entire families used to spend several days breaking the ground and removing weeds. Planting season was also very short, and some farmers couldn't even prepare the field on time, and they lost hundreds of dollars. He also noticed that conventional methods were affecting soil quality because it gave inconsistent results, and some soil patches were overworked while others were neglected. And the biggest problem was scalability. Deere knew that farmers had potential to grow their land and make more produce. However, they can't pay people and don't have enough workforce to perform the tiring task of weeding and breaking. Farmers were facing all these massive problems, but they were still not giving up. They were brave and didn't want their agricultural lands to become hosts of some factories that pollute their neighborhood. They knew all about the Industrial Revolution and how it was eating up the livelihood of farmers. So, they wanted something that helped them scale their land while also keeping the costs to a minimum. Now, after making a walking plow, John Deere was working on several other projects, but one question that constantly came to his mind was how he could help the farmers grow. And that's when he decided to make something other than a plow. So he designed a cultivator which was made to get in between the rows of crops, pull out weeds, while also stirring up the soil. The cultivator was good at multitasking, and it solved most problems of scalability and weed control. It easily took out all the weeds while also making sure that the soil was loose. The farmers also didn't have to put a lot of effort into using the cultivator because it was fairly simple equipment. So John Deere released his new product in the market, and it was an instant hit. By this point, John Deere already had a big name in the farming world. Everyone knew him, so word started spreading that John has made something that has revolutionized farming. John Deere started getting bulk orders from big farmers, but he also wanted small farmers to buy his products, so he didn't make the pricing super high. He was also getting business offers from big companies, and one of those offers came around in 1843 by Leonard Andrus. John Deere agreed to this partnership and built a 2-story factory in Illinois. All the manufacturing happened in this factory, and his efficiency tripled because in 1842 he was making about 100 plows, but in 1843 he made about 400 plows. However, this partnership soon ended, but the demand for his products remained very high. John knew that he needed a bigger manufacturing facility and a proper office. He didn't want to approach his business in a conventional way. John wanted to pre-produce the plows and cultivators so people could see them before they buy them. This was a huge risk because he could lose a lot of money, but John took the risk and decided to go for it. So he moved to Moline, Illinois in 1848 to optimize his manufacturing. John Deere chose this place specifically because it was close to the Mississippi River, and he could save a lot of money by transporting the raw material and finalized product through the river. He also had access to the railroad, so it was costing him less to import and export the goods from other states. And in Moline, Illinois, Deere found another businessman, Robert Tate, who was fascinated by his designs and business ideas. Deere was mostly focused on the designs and solving the problems of farmers, so he obviously wanted someone to manage the business side of things. Robert Tate quickly got on board, and soon they also hired John Gould, which managed all the finances of the company. Together, these three made a company in 1849 called the Deere, Tate and Gould Company. With Robert's investment and Deere's genius, they were making over 200 plows every month in a much bigger manufacturing facility. It was becoming a massive business, but John Deere felt like he wasn't being true to his roots. He felt that he not only sold the shares of his company, but sold the purpose he started this company for. Now, they weren't aiming to solve the problems of farmers, but just to sell more plows, which was never the purpose of Deere. He started getting more distant from Robert and Gould, and then he did something that his two partners never saw coming. Deere bought out the shares of both Robert and Gould in 1853. He made his son Charles join the company and made sure that it remained a family business. At this point, the company was not only making plows and cultivators, but also wagons and corn planters. All these products were also being advanced by Deere as needed. And in 1857, Deere's company was actually making 1120 units per month. But then, 1858 came, and the worst thing happened. They never imagined that a company who was getting insane profits would suddenly be on the verge of bankruptcy. It all happened because of the financial recession of 1858. There was a huge panic that happened in 1857, like the downfall of a major New York bank, the decline in the international demand of the American grain, and the economic condition of the country. As an aftermath, 1858 was like hell for the farmers. The recession caused major price drops of agricultural products, so the majority of farmers were unable to make any profit. With so little money, the farmers were unable to invest in new equipment, and the sales of John Deere & Co. decreased substantially. Many farmers took debts for land and equipment, and when they didn't make a profit during the recession, they went bankrupt. A lot of farms were closed, and getting credit loans became even more difficult. So the farmers had no access to money, and they were barely surviving. Just getting through the year was their purpose, and they had no thoughts about buying new equipment for their farm. In this situation, the sales of Deere & Co. obviously dropped and they started having cash flow issues. It was really hard for Deere & Co. to maintain their profitability because they already had very thin margins. But this wasn't the first time that John Deere was going through bankruptcy. He knew that he bounced back once, he could do it again. So in 1858, he sold his shares to his son-in-law to prevent the company from going bankrupt. John Deere was still the president of the company, but they made a few changes. They laid off some employees, reduced the manufacturing, and their purpose was to just get through this recession. John and his son knew that this economic crisis won't last forever. And they were right, because when the economy stabilized, the sales slowly started going up. And once again, Deere & Co. became the most sought-after company in farming. John Deere realized that his kids were managing the business really well and he could finally retire. So he left the business in his son's hands and retired in 1886. But within a month, he died. He was a farmer from heart and a blacksmith from profession, so being away from work probably didn't end well for him. But his son, Charles Deere, had a bigger plan for this business. He made some changes to the company in 1868, named it Deere & Company, and invested in the marketing centers. He wanted to reach out to as many farmers as he could. Charles also introduced independent retail dealers that increased the sales of the company nationwide. Initially, only farmers knew about Deere & Co., but now, everyone in America was getting to know what this company actually was. But in the early 20th century, the competition started increasing because the International Harvester Company was also offering similar products. So Deere & Company's buyers were being diverted. And during this difficult time of competition, Charles Deere lost his life. It felt like Deere & Company was going to crash and burn after Charles. However, William Butterworth, the son-in-law of John Deere, took over the company and made a decision that later made this a billion-dollar business. So Butterworth basically expanded the company and dived into the tractor business. Deere & Company tried manufacturing their own tractors, but it didn't work out well, so they ended up purchasing the Waterloo Gasoline Engine Company in 1918. This company manufactured popular tractors, and now Deere & Co. was owning it. Initially, it seemed like diving into the tractor business was a bad call, as the world was still reeling from the WWI devastation. However, the company already had a good reputation, and they didn't want to be left behind in technology. Farmers were obviously looking for more advanced ways that not only saved them time, but also money in the long run. After buying the Waterloo company, Deere & Co. also got the rights to the Waterloo Boy tractor. It obviously wasn't the first tractor on the market, but it definitely was one of its kind. It was robust, economical, and built to last qualities that matched the ethos of Deere & Co. And as soon as the acquisition was complete, Deere & Co. started making the Waterloo tractor under their brand. But they didn't want to be stuck in archaic models. The company soon realized that the tractor models were getting more advanced with every passing day, and big farmers were actually going for more advanced tractors. So in 1923, they introduced the Model D tractor that later became a staple for American farmers. This machine was made after keeping the needs of farmers in mind. It had a robust engine, great design, and was meant to work in the toughest of terrains. But the big problem for farmers was that they didn't want to invest in a tractor worth thousands of dollars that they can only use for 10 or 15 years. So Deere & Co. focused on this issue particularly and made this Model D tractor, which was meant to last for 30 years, making it the longest running tractor model in the US at the time. Deere & Co. wasn't just a plow company anymore, it was proving itself in the tractor market too. Soon, the demands of farmers started to advance as the government started focusing more on corn and cotton crops. Farmers also needed machinery that mainly focused on these crops and cultivated them properly. So to tackle this problem, Deere & Co. launched their Model A in 1934. This made sure that farmers were able to cultivate the crops of cotton and corn with efficiency and precision. While Deere & Co.'s sales were skyrocketing, their quality was getting better. But then World War II came along, and the execs at Deere & Co. believed that this would be yet another major fall in their business. However, Deere & Co. surprisingly rose to the occasion. Because of their high quality and reputation, they actually got huge tenders from the military. They made materials like parts of planes, ammunition, and even military tanks in their manufacturing facilities. They also produced tractors that were specifically designed for military personnel. So during the time when other businesses were struggling to even make the ends meet, Deere & Co. was flourishing because of their quality and good reputation. Even after the war ended, their sales kept going up, proving that Deere & Co. was the first choice of farmers. They kept making their sturdy tractor models until the 1960s, when they launched a whole new generation of power tractors. This marked a new era for the tractor industry, because these tractors were not only powerful, but had improved hydraulics and were also compatible with the new technology and modern agricultural practices. Then came the 1970s, a very difficult time for farmers and for the economy. The biggest problem farmers were facing at the time was the rising fuel cost. The energy crisis of the 70s resulted in fuel costs going up, and farmers who mainly relied on diesel-powered machinery were being crushed under these costs. To tackle this issue, Deere & Co. came up with the 40 and 50 series tractors that were fuel-efficient tractors. These allowed farmers to get more work done with less fuel. These tractors were actually the most cost-effective option in the market at the time, and they became an instant hit because farmers knew that Deere & Co. was making these tractors to solve their problems, not just to get more money. This trust of the farmers made Deere & Co. one of the biggest brands. The company also realized that the noise of the tractors often took a toll on the farmers. So in the early 70s, they also introduced the Sound Guard cab, which offered the farmers a quieter working environment. This was also the time when Deere & Co. started incorporating advanced monitoring systems and sophisticated controls in their tractors. This made farming easier and hassle-free for the farmers. As the 1980s dawned, Deere & Co. found itself in the middle of yet economic disaster. The farmers were struggling with inflation, interest rates were increased, and the crop prices were going down. At this time, no one was willing to buy new equipment because they had no purchasing power left. So Deere & Co. once again started struggling with their finances. At the time, experts assumed that Deere & Co. would dial back on their prices and make a new strategy, but instead, they doubled down on innovation. Deere & Co. introduced the 50 series tractors. This line was way more fuel efficient, had a better management system, and was designed specifically to cut costs. In the 1990s, Deere & Co. introduced the Green Star. It was the industry's first integrated precision farming system. It was to meet the needs of farmers who were looking for technologically advanced machines that reduced waste and maximize yields. Green Star was an instant hit because it used GPS technology. At the time, GPS wasn't very common, but Deere & Co. spent millions of dollars in perfecting this technology. As a result, the farmers could pinpoint and guide the tractors to the exact location. This allowed for precision in farming, reduction in overlap, and increase in crop production. This truly was a game-changing invention because other tractor manufacturing companies also started integrating science into their tractors after this. But Deere & Co. was decades ahead of its competitors. They were planning on expanding globally. Deere & Co. knew that farmers were present throughout the world, so they wanted to crack the untapped market. So they began to sell their products in countries other than Canada and the US, where their business was already flourishing. In 2003, Deere & Co. decided to embrace sustainability because climate change and awareness among the farmers was the main topic of discussion at the time. So, Deere & Co. introduced 8000 series tractors. This tractor had lower emissions, was fuel efficient, and addressed growing climate concerns. They also introduced no-till or reduced-till farming equipment. These equipment helped with protection of soil and reduced erosion. It was also the time when people in big cities started getting tired of materialism and moved back to the suburbs or farms. People begin to raise their kids at farms to keep them away from polluted cities. These were very well-off people, and that's why the sales of Deere & Co. sustainable trucks increased substantially. They also kept excelling at technology because Deere & Co. launched the AutoTrack system in the early 2000s, and it allowed tractors to steer themselves. The farmers were able to manage the machines remotely and monitor everything at a distance. This was a great tractor for farmers who were old or had a disability because they didn't need to do the tough part of the job. For the small things, they were just able to hire some help. As the time went by, Deere & Co. was the #1 choice of farmers, and in the 2010s, a huge pressure was upon them. The population was rapidly growing, and the farmers needed to increase the agricultural growth. So, Deere & Co. decided to automate everything. They started educating farmers and then launched a John Deere Operations Center. This was a cloud-based farm management system. It actually helped the farmers put in their data, track the performance, monitor their crop health, and find out what they can do to improve production. This transformed simple day-to-day farming into a high-tech industry, and Deere & Co. was on the driving seat of this industry. They also didn't stop their manufacturing, as the company introduced self-propelled sprayers and planting systems that were automatic. So farmers didn't really need extra manpower for basically anything. It reduced the labor costs and also increased the yield. They also started working on robotics and machine learning at a time when other companies weren't even thinking about it. And all this work and research paid off in 2021 when Deere & Co. finally introduced their first ever autonomous tractor. This tractor was able to operate all on its own and didn't need any human intervention. It was equipped with everything from sensors to cameras and even artificial intelligence to make real-time decisions. This meant that farmers could take care of their crop from anywhere in the world. Deere & Co. didn't stop there because they also launched their electric and hybrid tractors, proving that they're the pioneers in cleaner and more sustainable farming practices. These new machines were not only meant to reduce emission but also reduce operational cost. So, farmers actually started getting more profit. Also, the shift of people towards eating organic and farm-grown plants helped the farmers earn better. The culture of farmers markets in the US completely changed the way people saw farmers, and they got the chance to sell their produce without having to pay the middlemen. At this point, the company actually has over 67,000 employees in the US and Canada. It's also the largest farming company in the world. They have also acquired a company called Blue River Technology. With this, they're now planning on implementing machine learning to their tractors and other machines. It's truly the future of farming, and they've already introduced a self-driving tractor that works faster and smarter. The company, which was started by an orphan, is now ruling over the world. However, it's often questioned if the people who have come after John Deere have maintained the essence and core of the company. He started making plows to solve the issues of farmers, and he sold them at minimal prices, so even poor farmers could buy them. They have priced their products at a premium rate and have introduced advanced technology. However, only big farmers can afford these machines now. The upfront costs of thousands of dollars, financing and loans, and then costly repairs are really difficult for farmers to manage. And that's probably why Deere & Co. has become kind of a designer brand for farm machinery. Only rich and influential people buy it, but this is where the company went wrong. They were meant to make farming easier for common people. Instead, they've added a new cost to their already thin profits. But it can't be denied that John Deere in the 1800s completely changed the lives of farmers, and his inventions were timeless, to say the least. However, only farming tycoons and people who own several acres could afford Deere & Co. now. They've become technologically advanced, but a small-time farmer still can't spend several $1,000s on their massive machines. John Deere started from making just a plow for poor farmers and changed their lives. But Deere & Co. is now thinking like a business, which is fair enough, considering how they're a billion-dollar company. But they've somehow drifted far away from their roots and from the purpose of John Deere. So, do you think the company would have been different if John Deere was still alive today? Or Deere & Co. is only doing its best to survive in this technologically advanced era? Drop a comment and let us know. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care, and thanks for watching.